Episode 8, Special Evening. For several mornings now, Audrey has woken up in Astrea, feeling utterly drained. She lay still, watching the first rays of sunlight creep into the room. The start of a new day filled her with memories again. Her head felt heavy, her chest tightened with the dawning realization. Is this really happening to me? Audrey tried again and again to come to a conclusion with a clear head. Each time, clarity became harder and harder to reach. As soon as she started to analyze the situation, all the rational thoughts became drowned out by fear. Someone is trying to kill me. Trying to suppress her rapidly rising panic, Audrey closed her eyes and focused on her surroundings. I'm in my room. I can feel the warmth of the sun's rays. I'm safe and sound. My life goes on. Her throat immediately tightened with guilt. Unlike Oscar's. The young man looked at her across space and time, now living somewhere deep inside of her. I'll never be able to forget the look in his eyes. Never. The most vivid memories of the past few days flash before her eyes. Ethan in a pool of his own blood, staring lifelessly at nothing. Philip Moore banging his head against the interrogation room window. Could they be connected to me through Goodlum? Did my patient tell them about me? Is that how they all became like this? It sounded absurd. But I've seen so many cases in my work at the clinic. The desire to kill a specific woman might not be as unlikely as it seems. Moore visited Oscar so he could have known his brother Ethan. In Goodlum, they could have easily crossed paths with my patient and with me. It all seemed logical. She could see the unfortunate circumstances that led her to being the chosen victim. If only I could ask him questions without involving Astrea. The only piece that didn't quite fit was the beast. If this was a group, as Mikkel claims, then they worship some kind of higher evil. A religious cult so absorbed in the deity that its followers can actually hear its voice. But what do I have to do with their cult and the other victims? Is there a connection between us? At first glance, they had nothing in common. So there's a connection, but I don't see it. There's definitely targeting specific people. That's why they know me so well. The voice she'd heard in the garden echoed in her mind, and she shuddered. They were watching me. She realized the recent events had put everyone around her in danger, and it was all because of her. But Astrea has been searching for the followers of this beast for a long time. What are the chances that I ended up here purely by accident? Her next thought came in a flash. There are too many coincidences. And the most surprising thing is that ever since I started working here, I've been running into these murders constantly. It's like I'm bait. She didn't want to throw accusations around, but she didn't want to be naive either. Do they really need me to take me to see Philip Moore? Or did they want us to see each other? As soon as she grasped at what felt like a logical explanation, it immediately crumbled in her hands. But what proof did they need? Moore was caught at the scene of the crime. His connection to the killers is clear. And my patient attacked me way before I came to Astrea. Are they testing me? She ran her fingers through her hair, trying to hold the raging stream of thoughts in her head. So many mysteries. With a soft, drawn-out groan, Audrey grabbed her phone. Enough thinking. It's time to do something. Malik has free access to my patient. He can ask him any questions he wants. And my patient has to answer honestly if he wants to avoid jail time. Audrey dialed the number on the elegant business card and then hesitated. Maybe I should have rehearsed my speech first? For some strange reason, the thought of the professor made her inexplicably uncomfortable. It's just that I don't want to owe him anything. I'm not sure I deserve his help. I'm used to solving my problems on my own. I wish I could ask someone closer to me for help. I don't want to owe him anything. Who knows what's on his mind? What if this offer of his help is some kind of test? I didn't think you would call me yourself. His mocking voice quickly confused all of her thoughts and seeped into her mind. Can't wait to get your license back and leave Astrea? Audrey hesitated again. She was surprised that she finally had things going on in her life that could distract her from old problems. Compared to the fact that someone is trying to kill me, prison doesn't seem like such a terrible place. Actually, that's not what I wanted to ask. I'm not sure if I can talk about it over the phone. I'll pick you up at the agency and we'll talk somewhere private. Audrey had no idea what was on the professor's mind. She tried to protest. I think I can explain the gist of my request in the car. I prefer to hear your childhood story in a more pleasant setting. Childhood story? Though your request is different, its price remains the same, a conversation for a favor. She remembered now what Malik had asked for in exchange for her helping her to get her license back. She breathed out. All right. I don't know how my past could be useful to him, but I won't get my answers otherwise. I'll be there in 20 minutes. So soon? But without waiting for an answer, he hung up. He didn't even ask if I'd be ready by then. The professor's confidence was both striking and disarming. Okay, the important thing is that he agreed. Audrey glanced in the mirror and hurried downstairs. Before leaving, she decided to tell Mikkel that she would be away. I'm at work, after all. As it turns out, she wasn't the only one who wanted to talk to Mikkel this morning. The silence of the hallway was broken by muffled voices coming from the director's office. I can't help you, Phil. Because Michael said so. Because he's in charge here, and you know that very well. Phil's asking to speak to the higher-ups again? Aren't you above all this? This isn't about me. I guess Mikkel isn't here, so I should look for him somewhere else. Should I stay or should I go? Stay. Audrey moved back from the door until she was a safe distance away, then listened to the rather heated conversation. The last time David and I waited for Mikkel to talk to us, it was in the hallway. The situation behind the door was getting heated. Fell's voice was growing irritated, and Raphael's was getting tired. Who are you holding on to here? No one cares about you, just like they don't care about me. What do they all want with Raphael? I can't help you, Phil. Your fate is your responsibility. I have a much more important task on my shoulders, and you keep forgetting that. Mikkel sees it, that's why he doesn't believe you. Even through the wall, Audrey could feel the tension coming from that room, a heavy oppressive silence seeping through the cracks, one filled with pain. Did you ask your father why he did this to you? Why you must die while others live? What Raphael wrote in his journal isn't nonsense. Is he really dying? The unexpected news made her knees buckle. Is that why he always looks so sad? So, is he sick? Silence dragged on. For a moment it seemed like that Fell had succeeded in wounding him, but then suddenly his steely voice said otherwise. If my father didn't spare me, his own son, who has never done a single bad deed in his entire life, what makes you think he'd spare someone like you? His authoritative tone plunged the office into silence, abruptly ending the argument. Raphael can't be like that, too? She heard footsteps approaching. Nervous about running into anyone from the unpleasant conversation, Audrey hurried away, taking her questions with her. All right, I'll look for Mikkel somewhere else. Lost in thought, Audrey nearly missed Mikkel quietly descending the stairs. Good morning, Audrey. Oh, Mikkel, just the man I'm looking for. He stopped and looked at her from above. I wanted to talk to you, too. But you go first. I have to head out for a while. If there are no urgent tasks for me? Of course. Should I ask someone to accompany you? The unusual suggestion reminded her that she needed to be cautious. I can't even imagine who would be suitable to accompany me. Well, we have a choice of all four. Why not Mikkel? ? I'd do Cassiel. The thought of Michael ordering him to follow her made Audrey smile. I can just see him waiting for me in the lobby while I chat with Mikkel. And then I would definitely go to the shopping mall. Oh, now that would be so funny. There's no need. I know exactly who I'm meeting with. And we don't need any extra ears.
Well, then don't take too long. I'm going to need you tonight.
Tonight? She had to bring up the subject of the work schedule after all. Speaking of evenings and night assignments.
This is not an assignment.
Then what is it?
You've had too much on your plate lately, and I'd like to show you that our work is not all trouble and danger.
She didn't understand what he was getting at. She moved closer and tilted her head. And here I was planning to talk to you about trouble and danger tonight. Slowly descended the steps. He stood very close to her.
I'm certainly glad that you're not packing your bags and cursing the day you set foot in here. But at this rate, I'm afraid that day will inevitably come.
Talking in the hallway made the conversation move too quickly. It didn't have the right vibe. Still, Audrey had to bring up the subject that was important to her. I'm afraid that all the dangers I've faced here have more to do with me than Astrea.
Is there something I should know?
Trying not to let anything slip, Audrey beat around the bush. Well, you already know that all the followers of the Beast are trying to kill me, right? At least the ones we've met.
Of course. You mean Philip and Ethan?
There's another one, but I can't talk about it just yet. Seeing her hesitation, he changed the subject again.
Let's talk about this tomorrow. After all, I have something to tell you as well. But tonight I have to attend to a private soiree, and I'd like you to accompany me.
An evening with Mikkel? That's interesting. The chance to observe her boss outside of work was too tempting to pass up. It feels like we should be getting picked up by a carriage and take us to a ball. She hastily wiped the smile from her face. What are we going to do?
It will be a private soiree for enthusiasts of all kinds of valuable things. We'll just relax, try to find out somewhere the item we're interested in might be.
Something very expensive?
I would say it's priceless. Let's see what we can learn.
Audrey glanced at the clock and realized with horror that she was running late. He saw her reaction and hurried into the conversation.
If you don't manage to find free time by the evening, go there directly. The event will take place in the banquet hall of the Secretaria Hotel. It starts at 10.
He gave her a quick look and smiled.
You always look impeccable. I probably don't need to mention the dress code. But I'll allow myself the liberty to say that I can't wait to see you in the evening gown.
She blushed and nodded. I understand about the dress code. And about your desires, too.
All right. See you tonight, Audrey.
After saying goodbye, she rushed to the courtyard. A black car with tinted windows was already parked near the detective agency. Malik was leaning against the hood and curiously examining the mansion. He only averted his eyes from the bedroom windows when Audrey stopped next to him. Sorry, I'm a bit late. Ignoring her apology, Malik glanced somewhere over her shoulder and smiled. Your pet? Confused as what he meant, Audrey turned around. The wolf was creeping towards the car with a menacing stare. Malik had better get in the car. Yes, it's mine. Audrey exchanged a glance with the wolf and suddenly felt calm. The pet sat next to her, watching the man warily, but showing no more signs of aggression. What's the name of this marvel? Indeed, what is it? Bruno. His name is Bruno. I see you're adapting rather well. Is he talking about the agency? The dog now has a name. Woohoo. Can you tell him to lie down? I doubt it. Malik tore his gaze away from the wolf and looked at Audrey with much less interest. I'm afraid we can't take him with us. So unless you plan on giving him a command to eat me, say goodbye to him and let's go. Malik's commanding tone reminded her of her unfortunate position. It annoyed her. And he hasn't even done anything for me yet. It's okay, Bruno. I'll be back soon. The wolf gave Malik a suspicious look and then stood obediently and turned towards the house. If he's settled in the garden, I should ask Caskill to help get him set up. Before getting into the car, Audrey decided to tell the professor about her plans anyway. So, as not to waste your time, I'm going to come right out and say it. I need you to ask my patient a few questions, and I'll understand if you find that unacceptable. The professor opened the car door for her and nodded, inviting her to get in.
There are not many things in the world that I would find unacceptable. Get in, Audrey.
Taking this as an agreement, she obediently stepped closer. Where are we going?
To the hospital, to see a client of mine. We'll talk there.
Malik closed the car door behind Audrey and then got into the driver's seat. I hope I'm doing the right thing. You and me both. The reception area greeted its guests with familiar sounds. Audrey had always been struck by the particularity of hospitals. Faces change within their walls, but the voices were always the same. The indignant complaint, weary from waiting too long, the anxious whisper, utterly dire diagnosis, the clueless murmur of those confused about directions and offices. And at the center of it all was the ever-flappable nurse, who had perhaps seen too much in her lifetime.
Wait here.
The hospital corridors gave her a wave of nostalgia. Do I return to Goodlum? No. After everything that happened within these walls, it's unlikely I want to go back there. With a radiant smile, Malik easily caught the older woman's attention. He slid some documents under the window and introduced himself.
I'm here to see my client, Arthur Claudus. I need his medical records and a pass.
Audrey couldn't believe her ears. She barely resisted the urge to run up to the professor and snatch the file out of his hands. He's going to see my patient? As she waited for Malik to finish the paperwork, Audrey spoke as quietly as possible. Am I really allowed to be here? Not sharing her concern at all, Malik replied a bit louder than usual.
Why are you whispering, Audrey?
Because we're not supposed to meet.
Has Arthur given you some kind of restraining order?
No, but...
Then I don't see the problem.
Not knowing what to do next, Audrey trudged after the professor. Should I write down my questions for him or what? She asked something else more to get his attention than out of curiosity. How long will he be under medical supervision?
As far as I know, Arthur suffered multiple fractures. His bones practically shredded, his internal organs. And whether he'll be going to prison or to the morgue remains to be seen. But in any case, he certainly won't be leaving on his own 2 feet. So, you can ask him all of your questions yourself. He won't run away from you this time.
Myself? The very thought of meeting her patient again made her heart sink to her stomach. Audrey felt, or knew, that Arthur was bedridden and probably couldn't even lift a finger. But, alright. There's no more time for fear. I need answers if I want to stop this strange hunt. If you really can arrange it and security lets me in, then I'm ready. The professor's face showed paternal pride.
Determination is a wonderful trait. Actions worthy of respect are taken, not endlessly pondered, right?
There was no more time for talk or doubt. Malik stopped outside the ward. He held out the papers to the policeman on duty at the door. He nodded at Audrey and said calmly,
My assistant? I'm useless without her.
The guard shrugged, stepped aside to let Malik through. Audrey followed behind. A mournful silence filled the small room, broken only by the beeping of life support machines. Audrey thought that the meeting the person who had attacked her would shake her emotional stability, but she felt only one emotion: pity. And then she saw the terrifying, emaciated figure and lifeless face. God, what happened to him? Arthur tore his eyes from the ceiling, slowly turned his head towards the newcomers. He immediately fixed Audrey with a look full of hatred.
You bitch.
His face turned red and his head shook, but his body remained still. This was a stupid idea. He won't answer any of my questions. Malik glowered as if the insult had been directed at him personally and stepped closer to the patient. Watch your mouth, Arthur. Your future depends on it. Arthur's expression changed instantly. He forgot about Audrey and turned all of his attention to Malik.
You're...
Malik Sinner. I'm here to conduct a forensic psychiatric examination.
An examination? Of me?
Think of it as a test to help me determine if you deserve to remain a member of this society. Arthur swallowed nervously and blinked rapidly.
I didn't know you were coming.
How could I not come, Arthur? You committed a terrible act. You have to answer for it. Stunned, Audrey looked from Arthur to Malik, trying to understand the professor's strange behavior. Is he intimidating Arthur to keep him from lying? Arthur looked so pitiful that she found herself forgetting her own fears.
It's not my fault.
Arthur almost whimpered as he looked at Audrey, then quickly back at Malik.
I'm not guilty.
Well, we'll be the ones to determine that, Arthur. Audrey is going to ask you some questions now. Answer wisely. Don't stoop to insults. Do you understand?
Yes.
Keeping the intimidating expression on his face, Malik turned to Audrey. You have 5 minutes. What do I ask? Let's do it with Philip Moore. I don't know if we'll get to ask all these, but let's do with that one. Arthur glanced at Malik and swallowed nervously.
Can I answer the question?
Is he afraid that admitting that he knows the murderer will bury him? You can control your own tongue, Arthur. Say whatever you think is necessary. You don't have to answer. It's clear that you know each other. What do I ask? What do you know about the beast?
I know the most important thing. He is leading us in only the right direction.
Where to?
Where there is no place for you and your kind.
What the hell does that even mean? Why did you attack me?
Because it is necessary.
For whom?
For the whole world. You should be grateful for this honor.
Gee, thanks. Oh, I guess we have to ask all. Very short, though. Did the beast tell you to kill me? The wariness in his voice was replaced by a fanatical adoration.
The beast doesn't speak. He commands.
Did he also command you to jump out the window?
No. I jumped because another voice got into my head. It told me not to touch you.
Another voice. A wonderful story, Arthur, but you'll have to tell it a little differently in court.
Of course, I understand.
I wonder if you realize that Malik isn't on your side. Ignoring the timid voice of her conscience, Audrey considered her next question, but the professor gestured towards the door. I need to speak to Arthur alone. Not daring to take advantage of Malik's kindness, she nodded. Of course. Audrey sat in an uncomfortable chair in the reception area and began to think. So Arthur, unlike his fellow believers, heard a second voice. It's as if good and evil were battling within him that day. Audrey imagined an angel and a demon pulling the poor man in different directions. My parents would be thrilled if they knew that what I was thinking. At least now I have something to tell Malik. Or Mikkel. The cult is real. All the victims were chosen for a reason. Of all the information gleaned from the conversation with Arthur, Audrey received only the dubious news of a second voice. I didn't even know if I should take this seriously. She felt a pang of disgust when she realized that she would have to repay Malik for his meager confirmation of her suspicions. What kind of story about my life am I going to have to tell him? The usual hum of the hospital was interrupted by a shrill voice. How dare you come here? Audrey jumped out of her chair. She recognized these people instantly, even though she had never met them before. A couple was walking towards her, her patient's parents. The woman, spitting in anger, approached her quickly. Her shouts drew everyone's attention. What are you doing here? Torturing my son wasn't enough, was it? Ignoring the staff's feeble attempts to calm her, the woman only grew more enraged. To people like you, a human life isn't worthless, isn't it? You drove Arthur to unaliving, and you're happy about it, you filthy witch! During the commotion, Malik emerged from the room. He joined the gathering crowd of onlookers with curiosity. Well, what am I supposed to say? Ask her to calm down. Stop yelling. You're not on the street, you're in a hospital. If you want to talk, let's step outside. The crowd appreciated Audrey's words, murmured in approval, and then directed their displeasure at the furious woman. As she approached, the woman hissed venomously. I'll spend every penny to get justice. You belong in jail. The court will decide who belongs in jail. The woman threw up her hands in frustration and turned to her husband. We trusted her with our son, and instead of helping him, she destroyed him. Oh, you snake. You should investigate all your previous patients. Arthur may not be your only victim. Unable to listen any longer, Audrey tried to move past the couple, but the woman blocked her path. Where do you think you're going? The woman grabbed Audrey's arm and yanked her roughly towards her. Audrey clenched her jaw in pain, snarling through her teeth. Don't embarrass yourself, keep it together. Malik appeared behind the woman. Did you enjoy the show? Miss Claudius, I think you've said enough. Let's go with her. Professor Senna. The woman hesitated. She clearly hadn't expected to meet the man upon whom her son's freedom depended. Her grip loosened, and Audrey managed to break free. Professor Senna, this is the wretch who tried to kill my son. She snooped around here like a rat. Apparently, the quarrel no longer impressed the professor. Enough. Spend this time with your son while he still has it. The woman grew deathly pale. She tried to ask what was wrong with him, but after receiving no answer, she rushed towards the ward. The other visitors in the reception area also dispersed. Wonderful. Eager to change the subject, Audrey was ready to talk about their childhood anywhere and to anyone. Did you talk to Arthur? He nodded slightly and then suddenly smiled. You handled yourself well, Audrey. Unsure of what exactly he was praising her for, she smirked bitterly. As if I can afford to behave like her in my situation. I doubt you would stoop to such a behavior in any situation. Audrey saw nothing commendable in it. I should have put her in her place. I see you don't share my enthusiasm. I have to keep quiet because no one will back me up. She feels like a victim, so she allows herself to be rude and violent. Oh, Audrey. Some people find a better use for their heads than thinking nasty things and being rude. Trust me, she's going to lose hers, sooner or later. Would that make you happy? It would make me happy if they left me alone. I don't care exactly why or how it happens. To avoid looking completely pathetic, Audrey waved a hand dismissively. Alright, you can understand their perspective. They're worried about their son. Of course. You can try to understand anyone, Audrey. Especially if you get some kind of perverse pleasure out of figuring out someone's dirty mind. But you must never forgive rudeness. They hardly need my forgiveness, and I doubt there will be any good in it. Malik smiled at some thought of his, then whispered conspiratorially, It's right, Audrey. There is no forgiveness. And I'm glad you share my point of view. Malik opened the hospital doors and let her go ahead. But without even asking where they were going next, she obediently followed him to the car. As expected, Malik drove her to his office. The professor decided to save all conversation for later, so they walked through the corridor in silence. The same receptionist Audrey had seen the last time greeted Malik with unspeakable adoration. I wonder what it's like to be in love with your boss. The receptionist's feelings hardly resembled love, more like an unhealthy attachment, but in a way Audrey could understand her. When you are attracted to someone, their position no longer matters. This time, Malik didn't invade her personal space. Instead, he immediately sat down in his chair. Would you like anything? To hurry up and get out of here. No, thank you. I don't need anything. Well, in that case, let's not waste time. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. He gazed thoughtfully at Audrey's tense face. Why do I get the feeling that if he could get his answers any other way, he'd easily crack my skull open right here and now? Wait, what faith did your parents practice? For some reason, the question didn't surprise her. Considering what they did, I've heard the question dozens of times. I was brought up in the Christian tradition. I don't recall Christianity preaching mass exodus. I had to go with that because, you can't say the S word. No, I don't agree with question 2 because it happens often in religion. So are we going to talk about religion? Audrey couldn't understand why Malik wanted to have this trivial conversation. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was mocking her. I'm afraid it's been a while since I refreshed my memory of rereading the Bible. So you should find someone else to talk about this. Malik smiled in response to her obvious annoyance and drawled slyly. No, I've chosen the perfect person to talk to. I thought you wanted to get to know Ruth better. But answering the question, Malik tilted his head slightly and smiled. We were part of the same community. His smile, or smirk, widened. He gently interrupted her. Cult. Yes, cult. We were part of the same cult, but lived in different communes. Hers was in the southern part of the city. We became friends in college. What an interesting coincidence. Audrey often wondered how that was possible, but she eventually decided that fate had brought them together to help them through their shared grief. So what did you leave inside the church walls that day? Faith. He straightened in his chair and leaned forward. That's not true. If you truly had, you wouldn't have left it behind. After all, Ruth didn't abandon her faith. You've been returning to that day, not because of that. Audrey clenched her teeth and nodded. Yes, there are still questions left there. And to whom are they addressed? My mother. Satisfied, he leaned back again and continued. If you could talk to her, what would you say? It didn't take her long to find the answer within herself. On that fateful day, a question had pierced her heart like a sharp shard of glass. It had constantly reminded her of its existence over the years, timidly convincing her that some answers were better left unknown. Because if you pull the shard out, there's a good chance you'll end up bleeding to death. I would ask, what was in the cup? Poison or not? To find out who my mother was trying to deceive in the end. Me or my father. In the colorless voice that expressed neither compassion nor mockery, he clarified. So you live your life not knowing whether to love or hate your mother? Audrey pursed her lips and turned to the window. She was overwhelmed with the emotion, but it was anger directed at the professor that stood out the most. Do you enjoy provoking and stirring up conflicted feelings? Fine. What would you choose? Unlike her, the man didn't hesitate. I would choose both. I'd let myself feel both emotions, regardless of what your mothers did. You take everything from life, I remember. Smiling at a pathetic attempt to mock his worldview, Malik nonchalantly continued. Enjoy all the emotions, Audrey. It's a society that tries to impose those right emotions on you, to suppress your nature. First to tame you, then to tie you up to make it easier to send you to the slaughterhouse when you're no longer needed. His predatory smile suddenly reminded her of her father. He's not wrong, though. The smile of someone absolutely convinced of their own righteousness. Do you think your hands have been tied yet? His mocking gaze slid over her body as if trying to see ropes around her. Or maybe your legs. Goosebumps covered the parts of her body that his penetrating gaze touched. It was unpleasantly sharp, like needles, cold, like ice. Or perhaps the noose is already around your neck. One pull away from tightening and I'd hear you wheeze. Audrey could have sworn she saw a playful gleam in his eyes. You like those kinds of games. The thought made her feel curious. P.S. Ruth is associated with a very ambiguous person. He's very controversial and intriguing. Controversial personalities don't scare you. This is true. Nevertheless, conflicts between parents and children are a tale as old as time, and equally similar across the board. Do you have a childhood memory that is more vivid than this one? How could anything be more vivid? If a religious cult into existence with poison and swat bullets isn't vivid enough, then no. The lie didn't even come close to hurting her own conscience. Who is he to pry so brazenly into my soul? But vague images, though unspoken, began to rise from the depths of her memory. Remember. As a child, Audrey disliked going down into the basement, tried to avoid it unless absolutely necessary. Dark, damp, it inspired only disgust and fear in her, and so she carried out any requests from her mother to fetch or carry something there with incredible speed. In particular frightening moments, she preferred to close her eyes for extra courage, but when strange noises started coming from the basement, curiosity triumphed over her childish fear. Her interest was further piqued when all the basement-related chores suddenly stopped. After a tentative question to her father at a dinner, a lock appeared on the door. This bold move by her parents shrouded everything in a tantalizing haze of mystery. It blinded her and burned away all of her apprehension. She was consumed by one desire, the first thirst for knowledge. That night, Audrey could not sleep. She listened to the sounds, soft squeaking that her father had explained were from bats. Curiosity drove her to the terrible crime of stealing. She snuck the key from her father's keychain to the dead of the night and then lay awake until morning. That's when she first committed another sin, deceiving her parents. She pretended to be sick so she wouldn't have to go to service. As soon as her parents disappeared from their corner, she ran to the basement. She unlocked the door with trembling hands. Its light lit her way with a feeble flashlight and hurried down. The cross is moving. A completely new, unfamiliar smell hit her nose. It was so revolting that she had to cover her nose with her hand. It smelled of blood, sweat, excrement. The stale, stuffy air brought tears to her eyes. "Hey, Bats." Chains clinked in the darkest corner of the room. Biting her lip in anticipation, Audrey directed the dim beam of the light towards the sound. She couldn't hold back her scream. Ah. Fun times ahead, I see. Crawling on all fours, spider-like creature vaguely resembled a human moved towards her. "Please, help me." Audrey bit her cheek until it bled, stifling another scream. She took a step back. The creature stopped. It pulled the chains taut, its metal collar dug into the pale skin of her thin neck. "Please, save me." The voice was hoarse, weak, trembled, cracked, making it hard to understand all the words. Animal fear clouded Audrey's eyes. It turned into the exhausted child into a dangerous beast, eager to tear the unexpected guest apart. The thunderous voice of her father instantly brought the little girl to her senses. "Audrey, where are you?" For a moment, she thought her father was speaking from above, watching her from the heavens. But slamming of the front door indicated that he had simply returned home for some reason. This thought frightened her even more. The flashlight slipped from her hands. It rolled towards the creature, illuminating the scrawny, dirty legs and skin covered with dried blood and bruises. The creature clutched the flashlight from either side. They stared at each other with dazed eyes. "Don't leave. Don't you dare leave, you little brat." Terror burned in the monster's eyes. It released its grip, grabbed Audrey by the hair, and pulling her towards herself. But it was too weak. Audrey barely managed to free herself. She fell to the floor. The flashlight that had rolled away illuminated the deep, thin grooves on the floor, filled with blackened bloodstains. The creature's fingers traced across them as well. Breaking its long claws, it scratched at the concrete, trying to get out. "This isn't real." Audrey squinted, stumbled towards the stairs, trying to chase away the nightmare that had come true. The creature howled. Driven by the horrifying sounds, Audrey ran upstairs and, by some miracle, did not trip. Surprised her father didn't beat her down there. Now, I know it was a person. And the monsters were all of us living above her head. Pushing the memory away, Audrey focused on Malik again. This time, she tried to steer the conversation in the right direction and ended. "I hope I've satisfied your curiosity. You've managed to pique it a bit more, but I like the outcome even better." Not sure how to respond to that statement, she asked, "Does that mean we're even, of course? Until your next request. I don't know if I'll be making them to you anymore." Audrey stood up and Malik followed suit. "If you have no plans for the evening, we can stop at a nice restaurant on the way to Astrea." Audrey's eyes widened in surprise, and she quickly regained her composure. "I'm busy tonight. I'm going to soiree at the Sacre Terre Hotel. Why would you freely divulge that?" Confused as to why she was justifying herself, Audrey bit her lip. Interesting. Before she could ask what was so interesting about it, he headed for the door. In that case, please, come to the car. I'll drive you back. Once home, Audrey decided not to waste the little time she had had. She found out what time Mikkel would be waiting for, and then went to an online store to pick up an appropriate outfit for the evening. She ordered several options to choose from. Do they deliver in a minute? Because holy shit. We have emerald, pearl, obsidian, diamond, ruby. Outfits are alright. I kind of dig them. But we got black. Diamond's looking pretty nice, though. Not gonna lie. For once. Okay, I get it. I'm going with black. Listen, it goes with the hair. It really does. I really wanted the diamond, too, though. Now for my hair. No, I don't want to pick a hairstyle. Unforgettable. Okay, let me think about this. I'm probably gonna go back to the red one, but actually, I think for once, I think I'd go with this one for now. For now, kind of works with it. Continue. Unlike David, Mikhail didn't rush into the room to fetch his companion. He had told her in advance what time he would be waiting for her at the car. Audrey twirled in front of the mirror and smiled in approval. Perfect. 30 minutes remained before their meeting. At first, Audrey wanted to check the news. She was worried about finding an article with a picture of her from the hospital, but then she remembered her protector. Bruno approached Malik to make sure he wasn't threatening me. She really wanted to thank the amazing creature somehow. Maybe I should bring him a piece of meat at least. He must be hungry, wandering around in the garden. Yeah, I didn't even let him eat Malik, after all. Audrey grabbed a hefty piece of raw meat from the kitchen and hurried out into the garden. Now David wasn't planning on making a steak for dinner. She immediately ran into an unexpected problem. How do I even find him? Without much thought, she inhaled deeply and then shouted, "Bruno! Are you here?" The garden was filled with various sounds. Insects, birds, trees carried out quiet conversations, but among all those sounds, she didn't hear Audrey's howl or growl. After wandering around the garden for a while longer, she glanced at her watch. Shit, I don't have time. I have to run to the car. Staring at the piece of meat in her hand, she realized how ridiculous she looked. Ruth would laugh if she saw me now. Wearing such a nice dress, high heels, carrying a piece of raw meat around the garden, calling out for a wolf. I need to put the gift somewhere where Bruno can find it. Hide it in the bushes. Audrey moved deeper into the garden. She placed the modest gift in the low grass near a thick bush. "What are you doing in there?" The booming voice made her jump. God, Cassiel, you scared me. I'd kill you if I could. I'm leaving food for the wolf. The young man looked at the piece of meat and snickered. Do you think he can't feed himself? It's a gift. How sweet. The question of the gift settled. Cassiel turned his attention to the evaluator's unusual outfit. His gaze was slightly distant as he took in her curves, gracefully accentuated by the fabric. He frowned at the thought, but overcame it and looked up at Audrey with clouded eyes. Is he remembering that embarrassing scene with the flying fox? You... He stumbled over his words, looked flustered, and then fell silent. Is he trying to compliment me? He cleared his throat and asked instead, Why are you dressed like that? Oh, yeah, of course he couldn't, or wouldn't, stoic as he is. I'm taking a walk in your garden. Cassio raised an eyebrow and forced out a simple reply. I see. What was I going to ask him? Cassio had already decided the conversation was over, and he started walking towards the house. Audrey started again, finally remembered the question she had. Cassio, wait, please. I have a favor to ask of you. All of Cassio's emotions were instantly visible on his face. As if I ask him for things so often. What happened now? I wanted to ask you to help me build a kennel for the wolf. Is this some kind of joke? Audrey's enthusiasm quickly waned. When there was nothing left of it but embarrassment, a belated idea struck her. Actually, you know what? Forget it. I'll just order a big dog kennel online. Or one for a pony. Hoping he hadn't heard that last part, she tried to slip away. Wait, Audrey. She turned, stared gloomingly at the laughing young man. I like him much better with a stern face. I don't think he needs a kennel. I get it. You know a lot more about wolves. Can I go now? But I'll make one. Really? Really? I think you can do it. Befriend the wolf. Tame it. Even the wildest beast. He smiled warmly and headed towards the house, leaving her with a strange feeling. I think I'm actually starting to get attached to this place. Worried that Mikhail might leave without her, Audrey quickened her pace. This time, there was no taxi near Astrea, but what was likely a company car. A shiny, polished vehicle looking pressed, and it was a driver who drew all of her attention. David leaned leisurely against the hood and greeted his passenger with a smile. Shows the outfit David will wear for the evening. Oh, David's coming with us. Great. Style, passion, basic look. I mean, I like his basic look, but we'll go with style. I don't know. As if by habit, he assessed her outfit and gave her a content smile. You are dazzlingly beautiful. Planning to break some hearts tonight. Maybe. And tonight you are your humble servant. I'll take you to the hotel and back, making sure no one steals you along the way. What about Mikhail? Mikhail's running late. Well, let's wait. David was almost sitting on the hood of the car now. He looked up at the rustling treetops, and then he turned his eyes back to Audrey. Aren't you cold? The evening chill was not conducive to long walks under the moon, but the short wait was pleasantly refreshing. I'm fine. If you're cold, I can give you my jacket, or you can wait for Mikhail in the car. Should I get in the car or stay with David? Stay. I'll stay. It's not that cold. David smiled at her decision. He made himself more comfortable on the hood and turned his thoughtful gaze to the building's facade. He's unusually quiet today. I hope nothing's wrong with him. Not used to being the one to pick the topic of conversation with David, Audrey hesitated. How can we pass the time? Compliment him, get to know him better, talk about work. Compliment. The car becomes you, and so does the suit. It looks very impressive. Oh, thank you. I wouldn't say I put much effort into getting ready this evening. His words were confirmed by the uneven collar of his shirt. Just fix the collar and it'll be perfect. Audrey reached over and gently adjusted the fabric. She smiled and took a step back to examine the results of her handiwork. Now you look ready to meet a queen. I can't think of a place I'd rather be less. He sounded so sad that she felt a little sorry for him. Just like how I didn't want to get up for Sunday school. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of these kinds of events either. So maybe we should just forget about this soiree. Feigning horror, Audrey whispered conspiratorially. Are you suggesting that we run away? Yes. I'm willing to take you anywhere you want to go. She appreciated his trust, but hurried to warn him. I might suggest a library. Excellent choice. You have my full support. Hop in the car before it's too late and let's go. Laughing, Audrey tried to remind him of their duty. What about Mikhail? He'll arrive and we won't be here. What will we tell him? Blame it all on me. Say I tricked you into going to a library, wouldn't let you leave until the soiree was over. And he will believe us, of course. David sighed heavily as he realized that there was no choice and that his scheme would go unsupported. Well, I tried to save us. How can we pass the time? Well, we did the compliment, so get to know him better. Audrey looked up at the unusual starry sky, unsure how to start the conversation. David willingly followed her lead, tilting his head back. Time seemed to move faster in the silence, cloaked in a dark blanket of glittering specks. Unable to think of anything to ask, Audrey let her mind wander. At some point, her thoughts got lost among the stars, leaving a pleasant blankness in her head. Are you waiting for one of them to fall on our heads? She took her eyes off the sky and looked at David. That would be nice. Then I could make a wish. Audrey May saw skepticism on his face for the first time. She couldn't help but ask, Don't you want to? Oh, I certainly don't do that kind of thing. You don't think it will come true? On the contrary, I know for a fact that wishes have a way of coming true. A strange perspective added a mystery she wanted to unravel. Who would turn down such a simple way to fulfill their deepest desire? So, you don't like to ask? I can't even remember the last time I asked for something. So self-sufficient. I don't think stars ask for anything in return, so your pride won't be hurt. He smiled sadly and explained his point of view. It's not about pride. There's nothing wrong with asking. But I truly enjoy what you desire. You have to put your own effort into getting it. Otherwise, everything's lost its value. This is true. Audrey was taken aback. She hadn't expected this sort of outlook from someone so easygoing and fun-loving. David noticed her hesitation and smiled. You thought I was one of those people who doesn't know what they want, but dreams of having it all? It felt shameful to admit that he was right. I thought you took everything out of life. No, I'm very selective. Especially with my desires. I'm sure there's a story behind that. There is. And it's the story of my family. A story of unbridled passion, unquenchable thirst. Your father knew no limits? True, but that's not the point. The point is that all of his desires were fulfilled, but others had to pay the price for them. She couldn't get David to share more. After those words, he only seemed to retreat deeper into himself. Then I'll support you. And even if a star falls, I won't make a wish. Appreciating her sacrifice, David found a compromise. I am personally willing to grant any wish you may have. Oh no, don't even start. I am more reliable than some stars. Say yes. Audrey nodded, more to distract him than out of any serious agreement. It's pretty hard to refuse that. Just remember, you only have one wish. Use it wisely. How can we pass the time? Talk about work, why not? It's our third and final option. God, Mikhail, what are you doing? Polishing your shoes by hand? As far as she could tell, David had prepared for the upcoming event, or evening, as much as she had. His well-ironed suit fit him perfectly, highlighting his toned physique. Refined soirees suit you better than basement clubs. Really? I hate them. They're deathly boring. And the food is terrible. And everyone's ego is so inflated that even I get lost in them. Yet you're going. Think I've done something wrong, so Mikkel is dragging me along. His humorless descriptions made her less eager to go. Mikkel. He told me I was going to relax. Oh, he was lying through his teeth, you'll see. He'll probably bring you along so he doesn't die of boredom himself. Even if David's warnings were serious, Audrey would still have gone to the soiree. Did I buy this dress for nothing, or what? Do you often attend parties like these? Too often, I think. But it's always in vain. We never find the information we need. Maybe we'll get lucky this time. Anything's possible. Maybe you'll bring us luck. I think that's... I hope it's good luck, specifically. Well, that's it for that. Get in the car. After some hesitation, Audrey decided to get in the car after all. Alright, I'll wait for Mikkel in the car. Of course, don't freeze, little witch. Not knowing how else to occupy herself, Audrey began to let her gaze wander down the empty street, shrouded in the darkness of the approaching night. The unremarkable shadows cast by the dim streetlights stretched and distorted beyond recognition. Trying to work out their true nature, Audrey lingered on an unusual shape that stood still like a strange statue. Maybe a tree? In response to her thoughts, the shape twitched and grew larger. But from above, Audrey saw a silhouette slowly emerge from the shadows and move towards her. Who could that be? The dark mass was distinguished by her eyes. She could swear they were staring at her. David? She jumped out of the car and almost collided with Mikhail, who had finally arrived. What's going on, Audrey? She couldn't point out the cause of her strange behavior. The silhouette she had just seen had vanished. There was definitely someone there. I don't want to overthink it, but I know what I saw. And it didn't look like a friendly passerby. There was someone there, a person. David followed her gaze. He walked towards the darkness without further questions. Audrey felt guilty as she watched him go. She hurried to justify herself to Mikhail. She stammered and stared at her ever-serious boss. Choose the outfit that he will wear. I mean, I really dig his basic look, but elegant. Mikhail didn't let her continue. He opened the car door for her and invited her to sit down. It never hurts to be cautious. Soon David returned. He shook his head in disappointment. Whoever was there left no trace. Mikhail pressed his lips together pensively, then waved away his obviously heavy thoughts. Well, alright. Let's think about it when we return home. Audrey sat down again. She scooted a little further away from the window just in case and stared at the dashboard. She didn't want to see those strange, glowing eyes again. Sacra Terra Hotel was located on the outskirts of the city, hidden from prying eyes by tall pine trees. The elegant Gothic building was as dark and mysterious on the inside as it was on the outside. Audrey tried not to gawk too much, trying to keep in line with her more composed companions, and every now and then she had to rein herself back in. But who owns something so beautiful? The guests in the lavish banquet hall fit right in. The aristocrats, jaded by all the world's pleasures, they held their chins high as they glided through the hall. They exchanged empty but pompous chatter, asked pointed questions, drowned their boredom in crystal glasses filled with champagne. I wonder if Mikhail feels comfortable here. Audrey inadvertently compared this place to the club David had taken her on the second day in Astrea. She glanced over at the cheerful man in question. David held himself impeccably, showing no sign of boredom. Like a chameleon, he had taken on the atmosphere of the room and blended in with the crowd. His usual warm and open gaze had become critical and arrogant. So, that's how I'm supposed to act here? Even here, everyone is different. She looked closer. Audrey could see more people with open, kind eyes. Just like everywhere else. I'm going to mingle with the local fauna. Don't forget to talk to the organizer. Mikhail watched David walk off and turned to Audrey. Let's step into the shadows. My favorite place at any party, seriously. Audrey settled by a painted wall and glanced at her pensive boss. I can talk to someone too, if you explain exactly what we need to find out. Mikhail smiled at her enthusiasm but shook his head. None of us can do that better than David. We just need to enjoy the evening, wait for him to find someone who has the information we need. Audrey quickly scanned the diverse crowd and spotted her colleague. Smiling radiantly, David was talking to an elderly woman who was captivated by his speech. What secrets is he trying to extract from her?
Like I said, we're looking for a lost treasure. All these people are enthusiasts of a special kind of antiquity.
What do you mean by special?
Some of these items can undermine the foundations of society and make people doubt the integrity of historical events. Others can rewrite the past. The rarest can change the future.
The only thing that comes to mind is a time machine.
I'm afraid there is no such thing.
Audrey theatrically threw her hands in the air, attracting the attention of her overly inhibited guests. Where do you draw the line when it comes to faith? As soon as I start talking about something fantastic, you almost start doing a twirling motion next to your head. I'm beginning to think that I'm the crazy one here. Mikhail smiled and tilted his head slightly.
Not me.
This time, Audrey decided not to fall for the all-too-obvious provocation. Not many of you are mysterious residents of Astrea. Slowly, as if by inaudible command, the guests began to pair off. She had no time to ask what was happening. The answer came in the form of music that cascaded down like a waterfall from somewhere above. Audrey looked up to see a small orchestra perched on an inconspicuous balcony. This is really starting to feel like a ball. The guests shed some of their haughty arrogance and turned their eyes to their partners. Simple human joys suit them. The music beckoned even more. Remembering that she was brought here to relax, she mustered the courage to ask, "Are we supposed to stand by the wall and wait for David? Or is there nothing else we can do?" He smiled apologetically and hurried to redeem himself.
My apologies, Audrey, for dragging you here and getting caught up in observing. Of course, we can relax. Everyone here is harmless, as are their hobbies. You are completely safe.
Okay, so what are our options?
Unfortunately, we don't have many. We can join the dance or head to the buffet table.
Or we could keep an eye on those completely harmless people. Alright, what should I choose? I'm gonna go for a bite.
Let's see what we have to choose from then.
On a wide carved table, the dishes were arranged in an unusual way. The color palette made it difficult to see what exactly was being skewed on thin sticks or served on small plates. Some kind of molecular gastronomy? Audrey sniffed cautiously, but couldn't detect any sense.
What can I offer you?
She didn't want to admit that she couldn't even guess the names of the dishes in front of her. Audrey already regretted inviting Mikhail to the table in the first place. She shrugged. Everything looks kind of strange. And not particularly appetizing.
But it's delicious.
If I only knew what they were. Balsam noticed her confusion and hastened to help.
I would recommend that you pay attention to these dishes here.
Alright, let's see what he finds tasty. Praline sponge. Gold sphere. Carpaccio with foam. Lord help me, what the hell are we eating? I don't even know. Listen, I'm just gonna go with... It looks like a beet. I'm serious, it looks like a beet with a little piece of dish soap on top. Anyway, I'm just gonna go with gold sphere. Let me guess, it's got gold flakes. I'll risk trying this.
It's my favorite. You'll like it, I promise.
Carefully picked up the plate and presented the treat to her. Tactfully, he averted his gaze so that he wasn't staring at her as she ate. But as soon as the piece of food reached her mouth, she glanced curiously back, waiting for her reaction. The strange texture froze on her tongue, like a jelly that was impossible to chew. The bitterness followed her sickly sweetness, causing her cheeks to tense. Oh god, this is just disgusting. Audrey would have thought that Mikhail was messing with her if he hadn't followed suit and eaten the same thing. It was hard to believe that he could consume this awful dish so easily.
Well, what do you think?
She nodded. She tried to swallow the disgusting mess, but failed. Tears welled up in her eyes. After a moment's hesitation, he finally realized what was wrong. He handed her a paper napkin.
Is it really that bad?
She tossed it in the trash with remnants and replied without embarrassment, "You have very specific tastes. I don't even want to know what this is." He smiled guiltily and tried to suggest something else, but she hastily declined. "Let's just go back instead."
Of course, let's go. Thank you for your honesty.
Oh, you're welcome. I just want to live a little longer in this world. When the music faded to nothing more than a distant backdrop and the soft chatter of a dozen voices, David returned. Next to him was a man that Audrey had not expected to see here at all.
Oh, for the love of Christ, how did I know you were going to be here?
What is he doing here? As she met his gaze, Audrey couldn't help but raise an eyebrow.
Ignoring her silent question, he extended his hand to Mikkel.
Malik Sinner, the hotel owner who agreed to host these entertaining soirees. The brief handshake was followed by insincere smiles, and then came a rather unexpected sentence. And by the way, a close friend of your charming evaluator. A close friend. What an unexpected encounter. Especially since I told you myself where I'd be tonight. You shouldn't have told him.
Playing along with the less than ideal surprise, Malik nodded.
And a very pleasant one.
Another smirk was added to all the fake pleasantries that hovered over their little company.
Well, I can play along. After all this, neither is the best place nor the time to discuss our strange relationship.
Glad that the focus had shifted back to her colleagues, Audrey cast a subtle glance at the professor.
She wondered why he hadn't mentioned that he owned this hotel before. Did he decide to surprise me?
As soon as he started talking about something else, Malik lost all interest in the evaluator. Somehow the conversation veered towards Astrea.
I have to be honest, I didn't even know about your organization until recently. And if it wasn't for Audrey, I probably wouldn't have known right at this moment.
Our work is quite niche. That's an understatement. Audrey tried to detect traces of sarcasm in his voice, but the professor spoke with respect and unmistakable curiosity.
After I learned a little more about you, I admit that I became interested.
It's not every day that one meets ghost hunters.
We are called many things.
But none of these definitions really capture your essence, right?
Mikhail answered for David. His voice was cold and distant.
Right.
He obviously wasn't interested in exchanging pleasantries.
You don't organize events like this for no reason, do you?
Would you like to know if I'm a connoisseur of antiques myself?
Yes,
I am. My collection of antiques may be unmatched by anyone in this room. As they come closer to the point, their fake smiles disappeared, as did their unnecessary small talk. What exactly are you looking for? David handed him a picture of the symbol that Audrey had mentally dubbed the Mark of the Beast.
Any mention of this?
It doesn't matter exactly where it's used. We need everything. Well, I'll try to find out what I can.
Glancing at the symbol again, Malik clarified.
Can I have the picture?
Of course. We're willing to pay handsomely for any information.
Malik folded the photo in half, slipped it into the pocket of his pants, and he waved off Malik's offer. I don't need money.
Then what do you want in return?
Audrey barely managed to bite her tongue in time to keep from saying what she was thinking. Stories from your childhood. I'm genuinely curious about your agency's activities. I think your affairs can add to some excitement to my rather monotonous life.
Would you like us to take you on a job sometime?
No. I wouldn't want to get in your way. Just regular conversation is enough. God, he's so strange. Mikhail seemed to share her thoughts. She replied with some doubt.
All right, information for information. But we will pay money for any items found related to the symbol.
Malik smiled a little too cheerfully and extended his hand. Oh, deal! As she watched the firm handshake, Audrey couldn't shake the desire to leave this place as soon as possible and return to Astrea. Fortunately, no one had wanted to keep the conversation going. After exchanging business cards with Malik, Mikhail and David politely asked her if she wanted to stay. They probably breathed a sigh of relief at her firm no. I can't wait to just lie in my bed and close my eyes. She didn't even look around as she followed Mikhail. The soiree, which had been labeled an excuse to unwind, suddenly drained the last ounce of her strength. Audrey was half asleep by the time she reached her room. But by the time she showered and collapsed on her bed, her drowsiness had sneakily evaporated. What kind of life is this? Wound up by the events of the day, she decided to distract herself with something simpler. She reached for her phone. As she absently scrolled through the news feeds, her mind kept returning to the strange professor until her finger hovered over the flickering screen. A familiar surname in a headline made her heart skip a beat. Shit. The reporters caught wind of the fact that I was at the hospital after all. Preparing for another barrage of insults aimed at her, Audrey swiped her trembling finger across the screen. Oh, what did they say this time? Probably that I'm a monster who wants to finish off their son. How trivial. But the lines that caught her attention surprised her. Mr. and Mrs. Claudius died at 10:10 p.m. in a horrific car accident. Unable to believe her eyes, Audrey read it again and again. Their son, upon learning of his parents' deaths, died of a heart attack. The gruesome scene was somewhat blurred due to the censorship, but it deprived her of sleep for good, as it evoked an inexplicable horror within her. The wrecked car that collided with the truck was empty. Nearby, covered with white sheets, lay the bodies, and a little ways away from the bodies were two spots. They were carefully blurred, but not enough to disguise what they were. Their heads?
Off with her head!
I'd go with 5 stars. We got 4 faith, 3 skepticism, 3 reputation, 10 diamonds. Hold on. Alright, so looks like the next chapter will be available on August 8th, which is episode 9. Do keep that in mind. So I do apologize about being a little late on this. I know that I've been trying to cover these things as they've been coming out now, especially the newer books and whatnot. Basically, TLDR, life happens. I'm a human being, and unfortunately, health, issues and whatnot arise. So I do apologize. I do continue to plan on covering, Romance Club and everything else like that, and I do plan on covering these things. Like I said, literally and figuratively, health and life, they hit you out of nowhere. You can never be prepared. You can think you're as healthy as an ox, you can try and be, you can put yourself in a safety room or a safety bubble, and you can try and, that. Listen, there's still something somewhere will still get you, and eventually age and everything else does also catch up with you, and time and everything else. So, keep that in mind. Just live your best life the best way you possibly can. Other than that, once again, thanks for watching. Love your beautiful faces, and I'll catch you all later. Peace out.